The marriage contract hit the floor at my feet, enveloped in his suffocatingly bitter scent of cedarwood and frost. "Don't think this makes you my mate. You're just a parasite." I smiled, burying a bloody tissue deep in my pocket. Let him believe I wanted his millions. I just wanted a safe place to die. The sprawling Moretti estate was less of a home and more of a mausoleum. High-vaulted ceilings, cold marble floors, and an army of guards in tailored suits made it clear that this was the nerve center of the most ruthless mafia syndicate on the East Coast. I, Rowan Hayes, was its newest, most despised acquisition. My brother, Tobias, had racked up a staggering $6 million debt at the underground casinos run by the Moretti family. When the deadline passed, the collectors didn't break his legs. They dragged him before the head of the family, Damien Moretti. Damien was an alpha of terrifying repute. He was young, viciously calculating, and in desperate need of a legal bonded Omega mate to satisfy the syndicate's archaic board of elders before he could officially inherit the title of capo. Tobias, in a final act of desperation, offered me. I was a prime Omega from a once respectable bloodline, and my submission would buy his life. Damien had looked at me with eyes like chips of flint, his imposing frame radiating a dominant, freezing aura of cedar wood and frost. He agreed. He paid off my brother's debt, slapped a diamond the size of a knuckle on my finger, and moved me into the west wing of his fortress. To the outside world, it was a sudden, passionate mafia romance. To the underworld, it was a strategic power play. To Damien, I was nothing more than a gold-digging whore who had happily sold his body to save his degenerate brother, securing a life of endless luxury in the process. "You will attend the gala tonight," Damien said, not looking up from his mahogany desk as I stood in the doorway of his study. It had been 3 weeks since the wedding, and this was only the 4th time he had spoken directly to me. "Yes, Alpha," I replied softly, my voice barely a whisper. His jaw tightened. He hated when I called him that. He hated my obedience, assuming it was a calculated act to worm my way into his good graces. "Wear the platinum suit. The elders need to see that my wealth is being well spent on my investments. And try not to look so pathetic. You got exactly what you wanted, Rowan. You have my name, my black card, and a roof over your head. Pretend you're enjoying it." "I will be ready," I said, turning away before he could see the sudden wince that twisted my features. As soon as the heavy oak doors clicked shut behind me, my knees buckled. I braced myself against the cool hallway wall, a ragged cough tearing from my throat. I pressed a pristine white handkerchief to my lips, squeezing my eyes shut until the spasm passed. When I pulled the cloth away, 3 bright scarlet spots stained the fabric. Damien thought I had agreed to this marriage for the money. He thought my brother had forced me into it. But the truth was, Tobias hadn't forced me to do anything. I volunteered. 2 months before the marriage, Dr. Elliot Mercer, a private and highly discreet specialist at the Beacon Hill Medical Institute, had sat me down in a sterile white office. The scent of antiseptic couldn't mask the underlying sour note of pity rolling off the beta doctor. "It's called advanced Omegaverse degenerative myopathy," Dr. Mercer had explained, pointing to the dark spots on my scans. "It's incredibly rare. Your immune system is effectively rejecting your own secondary gender biology. Your lungs and heart are bearing the brunt of the deterioration." "How long?" I had asked, my voice numb. 6 months. Maybe 8, if we're lucky, he had replied. There is an experimental gene therapy in Switzerland, but the treatments cost upwards of $4 million, and the waiting list is miles long. Even then, it's not a guarantee. I didn't have $4 million. I didn't even have 4,000. But when Tobias came to me, sobbing about the Moretti cartel and a $6 million bounty on his head, a dark, tragic calculus had formed in my mind. I was going to die anyway. Why not trade my remaining months to wipe my brother's slate clean? Damien's money wasn't for me. It was the price of Tobias's life. Now, stuck in this gilded cage, my only goal was to endure Damien's hatred, keep up appearances for the syndicate, and quietly slip away when my heart finally gave out. The gala that evening was a suffocating affair. Hundreds of alphas, betas, and omegas crowded the grand ballroom of the estate, the air thick with competing pheromones and the sharp tang of expensive champagne. I stood by Damien's side, playing the part of the perfect demure mate. Whenever an elder approached, Damien's hand would clamp around my waist, a possessive territorial grip that looked like affection but felt like a vice. His scent would flare, dominating the space, forcing my Omega instincts into submission. It was exhausting. "Smile," Damien hissed in my ear as a rival family boss walked by. "You look like you're attending a funeral." "I am," I thought morbidly. "My own. I'm sorry," I murmured, forcing a bright plastic smile onto my face. "I'm just a little tired." "Tired from what?" he sneered quietly, pulling me closer so our charade remained unbroken. "Spending my money online? Lounging by the pool? You don't do anything, Rowan. The least you can do is stand here and look pretty for the people I have to tolerate." A sharp pain lanced through my chest, radiating down my left arm. My breath hitched. The heavy, oppressive pheromones of so many powerful alphas in one room were accelerating my symptoms, making it nearly impossible to draw a full breath. "I need the restroom," I gasped, pulling away from his iron grip. Damien's eyes narrowed, catching the genuine panic in my voice. For a split second, a flicker of confusion crossed his hard features, but it was quickly replaced by irritation. "Make it quick. Don't embarrass me." I didn't wait. I practically sprinted through the gilded double doors, down the quiet, dimly lit corridor, and into a lavish guest bathroom. I barely managed to lock the door before I collapsed over the marble sink, hacking violently. The metallic taste of blood flooded my mouth. I turned on the gold faucets, washing away the crimson evidence as tears streamed down my face from the sheer physical agony. I pulled a small, unmarked amber bottle from my breast pocket. Dr. Mercer had prescribed these heavy painkillers, normally reserved for end-stage cancer patients. I swallowed 2 dry, gripping the edges of the sink as I waited for the fire in my chest to dull to a manageable roar. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My skin was dangerously pale, the dark circles under my eyes expertly hidden by concealer. I looked like a ghost. I splashed cold water on my face, fixed my hair, and prepared to walk back out to my husband. Little did I know, the cracks in my carefully constructed facade were already beginning to show. As the weeks dragged on, my condition deteriorated faster than Dr. Mercer had predicted. The stress of living with Damien, combined with the heavy, aggressive alpha aura he constantly projected to keep the syndicate in line, was destroying my fragile nervous system. To cope, I had to double my medication. This created a new, dangerous problem. I was running out of pills, and buying more off the books required cash. A lot of it. Damien provided me with a black card, which I was permitted to use for my lifestyle. Until now, I had barely touched it, refusing to validate his belief that I was a gold digger. But desperation forced my hand. I began transferring large sums, $20, $30, sometimes $50,000 at a time, into a dummy account set up by Dr. Mercer to cover the exorbitant cost of the black market painkillers and the in-home IV drips I administered to myself in the dead of night. It didn't take long for Damien to notice. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. I was wrapped in a thick wool blanket in the library, shivering despite the fireplace blazing in front of me. My core temperature was failing. The heavy mahogany doors slammed open. Damien strode in, bringing the smell of rain and furious cedarwood with him. His right-hand man, a grim-faced beta named Nolan, stood in the doorway, clutching an iPad. Damien marched directly to the armchair. I was curled in and tossed a thick stack of printed bank statements onto my lap. "Explain this." His voice was dangerously low, a deadly rumble that made my chest vibrate. I looked down at the highlighted lines. Hundreds of thousands of dollars funneled out of his accounts and into an LLC named Apex Medical Supply, the shell company Dr. Mercer used to protect the identities of his high-profile clients. My heart hammered against my ribs, a dull, agonizing thud. I bought some things. Things? Damien laughed, a harsh, humorless sound that echoed off the high ceiling. $500,000 in 2 months, Rowan. And yet I don't see any new cars in the driveway. I don't see any new designer clothes in your closet. You don't wear jewelry. So where is my money going? I stayed silent, clutching the blanket tighter around my shoulders. I couldn't tell him. If Damien found out I was dying, he would see it as a breach of our contract. An alpha of his status could not be tied to a defective mate. It would show weakness to the rival syndicates. He might annul the marriage, demand the $6 million back from Tobias, and my sacrifice would have been for nothing. "I spent it," I whispered, staring at the rug. Damien grabbed my chin, his fingers digging into my jaw as he forced me to look at him. His dark eyes were blazing with a terrifying intensity. "Don't lie to me. Nolan tracked the LLC. It's a ghost company. You're laundering money, aren't you? You're funneling it straight back to Tobias." My breath hitched. "No, Damien, please, Tobias has nothing to do with this." "Shut up!" Damien roared, his alpha command washing over me like a physical blow. My Omega instincts flared in terror, and I squeezed my eyes shut, my entire body trembling violently. "I knew what you were the day I bought you," Damien spat, his face inches from mine. "A scheming, manipulative little rat. You thought because you wear my ring, I wouldn't notice you bleeding me dry to fund your brother's pathetic life? I own you, Rowan. You don't breathe without my permission, let alone steal from my syndicate." "I'm not stealing for him," I gasped, tears finally spilling over my lashes. "Please, Damien, you have to believe me. The money, I needed it for medicine. To stay alive just a little longer." The words died on my tongue. "For what?" he mocked, releasing my chin in disgust. "For your secret lover? For your escape fund?" He stepped back, wiping his hand on his slacks, as if touching me had dirtied him. I don't care what you needed it for. Your accounts are frozen. Your allowance is cut off. From now on, you don't leave this estate without an armed guard, and you don't spend a single cent without my direct approval." "Damien, no!" I shot up from the chair, the blanket falling to the floor. "You can't do that. I need—" Before I could finish the sentence, the world tilted on its axis. Standing up so fast, combined with the crushing weight of his angry pheromones, pushed my failing heart past its limit. A blinding, white-hot pain tore through my chest. It felt like my ribs were snapping inward. I gasped, my hands flying to my chest, but no air made it to my lungs. "Stop the theatrics, Rowan," Damien growled, turning his back on me to walk toward the door. "It's pathetic. Duh!" "Mien," I choked out. My vision narrowed to a pinprick. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me completely was Nolan's eyes widening in horror as he stepped forward, and Damien slowly turning back around just as my knees hit the hardwood floor. I didn't feel the impact. I only felt the cold. When I finally regained consciousness, the harsh glare of fluorescent lights blinded me. I wasn't in the library anymore. I was in a hospital bed, the steady, rhythmic beep, beep, beep of a heart monitor echoing in the sterile room. I had an oxygen mask strapped over my face, and an IV was taped to the back of my hand. I blinked heavily, trying to clear the fog from my brain. As my eyes adjusted, I realized I wasn't in a standard hospital. This was the underground Syndicate Infirmary, a highly advanced medical bay beneath the Moretti estate used for patching up soldiers with bullet wounds. And sitting in the corner of the room, entirely shrouded in shadows, was Damien. The anger was gone from his scent. Instead, the room was thick with something else, something chaotic, bitter, and suffocatingly so. It was the scent of an alpha in deep distress. "You're awake," his voice was hoarse, stripping away his usual icy veneer. I reached up, weakly pulling the oxygen mask down to my chin. How long?" I rasped, my throat feeling like sandpaper. Damien didn't answer right away. He stood up slowly, stepping into the light. He looked a mess. His expensive suit jacket was gone, his tie was discarded, and the top 3 buttons of his shirt were undone. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. In his hand, he held a thick manila folder. The crest of the Beacon Hill Medical Institute was stamped on the front. My blood ran cold. "Nolan bypassed the shell company," Damien said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. "He hacked the servers of the clinic you were sending the money to. We thought we were going to find evidence of Tobias hiding cash." He stepped closer to the bed, dropping the heavy medical file onto my lap. "Instead," Damien whispered, his voice cracking violently, "I found this." He stared at me, his dark eyes red-rimmed and hollow, completely shattered. The Ruthless Mafia boss was gone, replaced by a man staring at a ghost. "Advanced myopathy." Damien read the diagnosis aloud, as if tasting the poison of the words. "Terminal. 6 months." He fell into the chair beside my bed, burying his face in his hands. A raw, ragged sound tore from his chest, a sound I never thought I would hear from the untouchable Damien Moretti. "Moretti, why didn't you tell me you were dying?" The silence in the underground infirmary was suffocating, heavy with the weight of unsaid words. The air now smelled of rain and crushed pine, the unmistakable scent of an alpha in deep mourning. I stared at the manila folder on my lap, unable to meet his broken gaze. The secret I had guarded so fiercely was out. completely shattering the careful distance between us. "It wouldn't have changed anything," I finally whispered, my voice rattling in my weak chest. "You needed a bonded Omega to satisfy your elders. Tobias needed his massive debt erased. I needed a place to spend my final days in peace, without burdening anyone in the real world. It was a transaction, Damien. The terms just had an expiration date you weren't aware of." Damien's head snapped up, his eyes flashing with a sudden, violent grief. "A transaction? You think your life is just a line item on a mafia ledger?" He stood up, pacing the small room like a caged predator, running his hands through his dark hair. "You let me treat you like dirt. You let me humiliate you in front of the syndicate. You let me believe you were a parasite bleeding my accounts dry to buy clothes. Why didn't you defend yourself, Rowan? Why did you just take it?" "Because you wouldn't have believed me," I said, a tear slipping down my pale cheek. "And because it was easier. If you hated me, if you viewed me as nothing but a gold digger, it wouldn't hurt you when I finally stopped breathing. I wanted to disappear quietly." Damien stopped pacing. He stared at me, the tragic realization hitting him like a physical blow. He walked to the edge of the bed and carefully, almost reverently, took my fragile hand in his. His large, rough fingers trembled against my bruised skin, where the needles had left dark marks. "I had Nolan dig deeper into your brother's financials," Damien said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, icy whisper that chilled the room. "He didn't just owe me money, Rowan. He knew about your diagnosis long before you told him. He owed a massive gambling syndicate in Las Vegas, and he intentionally leveraged your terminal status, knowing you would sacrifice yourself to save him. He deliberately sold his dying brother to buy his own miserable life." My breath hitched, the heart monitor beside me spiking erratically. Tobias knew? The brother I had given my life for had calculated my death into his survival? A fresh wave of agony washed over me, not from my failing lungs, but from my completely shattered heart. I let out a choked sob, the betrayal cutting deeper than the degenerative myopathy ever could. Damien gently wiped the tear from my cheek, his touch surprisingly soft for a man whose hands were stained with blood. "I sent my men to find him. He is currently secured in a warehouse by the docks. He will never hurt you again. But right now, my only priority is you." "There is no priority, Damien," I rasped, squeezing his hand weakly. "Dr. Mercer said it himself. 6 months. I have maybe 2 left. Even the top cardiologists at Johns Hopkins Hospital reviewed my charts last week. They refused to operate. They explicitly stated my heart wouldn't survive the anesthesia. It is over. You have your legitimate marriage on paper. Let me go." "I do not accept that," Damien growled, his alpha dominance flaring in sheer, unyielding stubbornness. "I run the most powerful syndicate on the East Coast. I own politicians, judges, and entire cartels. I am not going to let the only person who ever sacrificed everything for another die in my house. I do not care what the doctors at Johns Hopkins say. We are going to Switzerland." Within 20 hours, the entire Moretti syndicate shifted its focus from organized crime to my survival. Damien grounded his private jet, outfitting it with advanced medical equipment and trauma surgeons. I was too weak to walk, so Damien carried me onto the plane himself, wrapping me in his coat to keep the freezing wind from chilling my bones. The journey to the facility in Geneva, Switzerland, was a blur of heavy sedatives and oxygen masks. The clinic was run by Dr. Henrik Vogel, a controversial geneticist who pioneered the experimental therapy I desperately needed. Damien did not just pay the $4 million entry fee. He wired $20 million to Vogel's private offshore account to ensure I bypassed the waiting list completely. "I is highly unstable," Dr. Vogel warned Damien as they wheeled my stretcher into the sterile, blindingly white preoperative room. "The myopathy has eaten away at the structural integrity of his left ventricle. The gene therapy is aggressive. It will rewrite his cellular structure to stop the rejection of his omega biology. But the physical strain during the procedure is immense. He might not wake up." Damien stood by my side, refusing to leave despite the protests of the medical staff. He leaned down, pressing his lips to my forehead. His scent of cedar wood was overwhelming, masking the chemical smell of the hospital. "You fight, Rowan," Damien whispered fiercely against my skin. "You fight for me. You gave your life away for a brother who did not deserve it. Now, I am demanding that you live for a husband who will spend the rest of his life making it up to you. Do you hear me? You do not leave me." I managed a faint, tired smile. "I will try," I breathed, just as the anesthesia took hold and dragged me into the dark. The surgery lasted 14 grueling hours. I learned later that Damien never left the observation deck, standing like a stone gargoyle, his knuckles white as he gripped the railing. In the darkness, I felt entirely weightless. The chronic, burning pain in my chest was gone. I opened my eyes, the harsh lights forcing me to squint. I was in a recovery suite. My chest felt incredibly heavy, wrapped tightly in thick bandages. But as I drew a breath, the air flowed smoothly into my lungs, without the agonizing rattle of fluid and failing tissue. Damien was asleep in a chair beside the bed, his head resting on the edge of my mattress. His fingers were loosely intertwined with mine. He looked utterly exhausted, with dark shadows bruising the skin under his eyes and heavy stubble coating his sharp jawline. I squeezed his hand slightly. Damien jolted awake instantly, his dark eyes snapping open with a wild, feral panic that melted into pure, unfiltered relief the second he saw me looking at him. He let out a ragged breath, pressing his forehead against our joined hands. "You are here," he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. "You are actually here." "You did not let me leave," I replied softly, my voice hoarse but steady. Dr. Vogel entered the room a moment later, checking the monitors with a satisfied nod. "The stem cells have integrated successfully. The cellular degeneration has completely halted. It will take months of intense physical therapy to rebuild your strength, Rowan. But your heart is pumping normally. You are no longer dying." Tears pricked my eyes as the immense weight of my death sentence lifted off my shoulders. I looked at Damien, the ruthless, terrifying mafia boss who had torn heaven and earth apart to save the mate he once despised. Months later, the sprawling Moretti estate no longer felt like a mausoleum. It felt like a home. Tobias had been dealt with, banished from the country, stripped of his assets, and permanently cut out of my life. Damien had completely transformed. Inside the walls of our estate, he was fiercely devoted, his coldness replaced by an intense, protective love. We stood together on the balcony, watching the beautiful sunset over the sprawling green gardens. Damien wrapped his strong, muscular arms around my waist from behind, resting his chin gently on my shoulder. His rich scent was perfectly safe and completely intoxicating. "No more secrets," Damien murmured, kissing the delicate scent gland on my neck. No more secrets, I agreed, leaning back into his warm embrace, my completely renewed heart beating strong and steady. I had finally found a fiercely devoted alpha and a miraculous second chance at a beautiful life together. The cold contract that once started as a brutal death sentence had unexpectedly become my absolute, everlasting salvation. Did you enjoy this intense Omegaverse Mafia romance? If Rowan and his alpha captured your heart today, please hit that like button to show your support. Do not forget to share this incredible story with your friends and fellow audio drama fans. Subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you never miss out on thrilling twists and emotional finales. Drop a comment below, sharing your absolute favorite moment. We love reading your lovely feedback every single day.